everyone, this is Lindsay from Sea Salt and Samphire, and today we're going to create a shadow box design from scratch, all within Cricut Design Space. Cricut Design Space, for those who don't know, is the software that you have to use with any kind of Cricut branded cutting machines. You can actually make designs in other software like Adobe Illustrator and other vector design software, but you still have to bring it into Cricut Design Space to actually cut it, because it's the only thing that will talk to the machine. But today I decided we're actually going to make everything within Cricut Design Space itself, just to show you that it can be done. Despite its name, it actually isn't the best design software. There's not many features in it. So you can't just sort of draw a picture and miraculously create something. The only kind of thing it has is sort of a shapes panel, but as most things in life are made up of shapes, it's actually possible to build quite a nice picture just using the shapes themselves and manipulating them. So I thought that's what I'd show you how to do. I think the reason it doesn't have so many features is because Cricut kind of rely on people paying to buy sort of individual files that then people can cut, so it kind of keeps bringing the money in after you've bought your machine. But maybe that's me being a skeptic. Anyway, let's go ahead. I thought it'd be nice to create a wintry kind of shadow box, as we're coming up to the winter, or it seems like today we are actually in winter now. So I thought we'd have a snowman in there somewhere and maybe some snowflakes. So let's open a new project in Design Space. And the first thing we're going to do is build the snowman. So we select the circle shape from the shape palette and bring it over somewhere where it's workable. And then we're going to go ahead and duplicate the circle and then make that one a tiny bit smaller. This is going to be the middle of the body of the snowman. And then we're going to duplicate it again and do the same process and resize for the head. And once you're happy with it and the way it's all aligned, you could use the align tool, but I didn't bother. And then you select it all together and then go down to the bottom and you'll see the weld symbol. You weld it together and this makes that all one shape now, so it's no longer a circle, it's actually a snowman shape. And then we're going to go back and go onto the square shape and to make the hat, but we're going to click the little padlock to unlock it, so you can sort of change it into a rectangle basically, because there's no rectangle shape in the palette itself. This is the brim of his hat, and once you're happy with that, then you can go back and do another square, and then this time this is going to be the top part of his little top hat. You might need to fiddle about a little bit to get it the right sort of shape and size. And then we're going to align them to make sure they're centred, which is what I probably should have done with the snowman itself. And then weld them together so they're their own shape now, or they are a shape now. And then you want to line up the hat with the snowman, put it on top of his head. And then select all of them and weld, and now they're one big shape. So we're going to need to make his arms. Again, we're going to unclick the padlock, unlock the padlock, and make a rectangle kind of shape, long thin rectangle, and then click the padlock closed again so that you don't accidentally change it, and then put one of his arms there. And then we're going to duplicate it for the other arm, but we also need to go ahead and flip it horizontally so that it goes the right way, or the way that we want it anyway. and then you need to sort of just fiddle about until you're happy with the placement of it, and then select all of them again, and you've guessed it, weld. There's our sort of silhouette of a snowman, but we need to give them a face really. You can zoom in and zoom out on here quite easily. There's like a little thing at the bottom of the screen, you've probably seen. So I'm going to do his eyes first, but I'm actually going to change the colour of the circle just so I can see it against the silhouette of the snowman. I'll sort of adjust it to the kind of size I think the eye should be. And then I've duplicated the eye, so we've got two. And then I'm going to align them just to make sure. And then I've removed that alignment completely. Let's do it again. Alright, now they're moved over together. That's what I wanted to do. Okay, so I'm going to duplicate one of his eyes and then make it a little bit smaller. And these are going to be, I'm going to duplicate this one a few times, or I'm going to duplicate that circle a few times to make his mouth. This might take a bit of fiddling about really to get it how you want it. Incidentally, when I'm selecting lots of shapes together, the way to do that is just click with your mouse and then drag over the shapes that you want to hold together and move around, or do any action on really together. So I can see here that I'm going to have to move the mouth down a bit. I've zoomed in again slightly just so I can see it better. I'm going to be 45 soon, so my eyesight's not what it was, especially staring at a screen all these years. Okay, so select them together, move it over. It's still a little bit big for his face, so resize it slightly. Drag it over again. Excuse me, I've still got that horrible cold. There we go, that's about right now. Yeah. Sorry about this. That's the problem with being a perfectionist, isn't it? Okay, right. Right, we'll stop fiddling now. Maybe just a little bit more. Right, so now we can't just slice, well, you could slice them out one at a time, but it'd take forever. So what you need to do is actually weld those together, although they're not overlapping. You need to weld the shapes together, and what that does, it means when you select everything, you can slice, and it'll actually cut out all of those facial features together. So you need to just delete the blue ones, and also you'll see another slice result in the window that can be deleted as well. And then what you're left with is basically a cutout of the face on the snowman. Now I could go ahead and do buttons and things, but I think I've fiddled about too much with the face, so we'll just go ahead and right, so we're going to make the snowflake now, and you think, oh, snowflake's quite complicated, but as with the snowman, it's just a matter of putting shapes together, several shapes together. So basically I'm duplicating and turning them 45-degree angle, and then I'm going to flip that one that I've duplicated, and then the magic happens. Right, so select all of those rectangles, and then if you hit the align and center, it'll bring it all together and it's looking more like a snowflake. Oops, let's go back. Right, so now we need to select all those and we've got to weld them. I'll make it a little bit bigger. There we go. Okay, and now we're going to weld them together. So now it's our basic snowflake shape. You could leave it like that, but I want to make it a little bit more fancy and snowflake-like. So I've chosen the triangle shape and I've duplicated, and what we're going to do is cut the bottom triangle shape out of the top one. So I want to align them first to make sure they're in the right place for what I want. Select them all and then slice. And you'll see it makes a few shapes. We're just going to delete the ones that we don't want. Right, so I'll get rid of those two. I'm trying hard to remember to use the delete button actually on the screen, but sometimes you'll notice things disappear and it's because I've just backspaced it to get rid of it. But I promise I'm trying to use the buttons on screen so you can see what I'm doing. Right, so I've just aligned that by eye really for now, and then I'm going to go ahead and align it properly. If I was just making this for me and not showing you what to do properly, I wouldn't have bothered with the extra line. My eyes are quite good at aligning things. Okay, right, so we're going to align that one as well. There we go. Right, so now we've got our two main shapes and we're basically just going to copy these around, but what we're going to do is group them together first so that we're copying both at the same time and so they stay the same distance apart so that it remains quite symmetrical. And then we've got to change the angle of this one to 90 degrees, and then we're going to duplicate it. Sorry, we're going to duplicate it again, and then we're going to have to rotate this one to 45 degrees. If you're not very good with maths like me, it takes me a lot of brain power to work out angles. You could just use the little rotate toggle bit that comes up when you select it, the one at the top right on this. But as I said, I'm trying to do things properly today. Okay, so that's looking even more like a snowflake now, a fancy one. Right, so now we're going to select all of this. Now we're happy with it. And you've guessed it, we're going to weld it. Right, now again, we could just stop there, but I'm feeling fancy today. So I know the basic shape of this is an octagon really. You can see an octagon in there. If you rotate the octagon slightly, we're going to do that in a minute. Right, so I'm going to move that down. And I'm going to duplicate it and then make the top one slightly smaller and try and get the width the same as the prongs. I don't know what other word I can use for that. The prongs on the snowflake that are already there. And then select it together and just align it just to make sure it's right in the centre, and then slice. And then we're going to remove the bits we don't want, so we want that bit. Remove those and delete. So what you're left with is like an octagon shape, cut out octagon, and then we're going to rotate this so it lines up so the prongs of the snowflake line up with the corners on the octagon. I hope that makes sense. I've never had to describe a snowflake before. Right, and we're just going to centre align this as well, just so it's in the right place. There we go, it looks okay to me. Looks like a snowflake. And then last thing to do is weld that together. So there we go, that's our two basic main shapes we're going to use for our shadow box. Right, just move them over to the side. Now, as I said, it doesn't matter what size these are at the moment because we can resize them to fit the shadow box. It's just important that we do the shapes first so they're there. So now we're going to make the middle layer of our shadow box. And I know that I want it to be 20 centimetres by 20 centimetres, which is about 8 inches, which is the size frame that I generally use. Obviously you could make yours to the whatever size you need. And then I'm putting a 17 centimetre circle in the centre because I'm going to cut that out. So we need to select it and centre a line, and then we need to slice it, select and slice it, and then get rid of the circles that we don't want. Okay, so that's this is going to be our snowman layer, our focus layer in our shadow box. I'm just duplicating it because I know I'm going to work on one of them, and obviously I want the copy because obviously it's going to be more than one layer. So I've just made a copy and then hidden it. You can hide things in the layers panel by clicking the little eye on the right hand side. So I'm resizing my snowman to fit the size I want within this layer. The important thing about shadow boxes that a lot of people who are new to designing them get wrong is they put their subject in the middle and then it's not connected to anything. So if you cut it out of anything other than really stiff card, it's going to go floppy in your frame. So what I've done is I've basically lined up the snowman and I welded it to the layer, to the shadow box layer. So now what I'm doing, I'm adding some sort of hilly snow, or what's going to look like hilly snow when it's cut out in white, to the bottom. And all I've done is used the circle tool and then clicked the little padlock again so that I could manipulate the circle. Right, so now, again, I'm duplicating my snowflake because obviously I'm going to use it in other layers. Right, so let's move this one over here. And again, I'm going to rotate this snowflake just so I've got more contact points with the layer itself. It just gives it a bit more. I mean, small shapes like this hanging from above probably wouldn't be too much of a problem, but it just gives it more stability in the shadow box. So I'm happy with that, so I'm going to weld that together. So now that's one layer for our middle layer for our shadow box, and I'm going to change the colour of it just because I know I'm going to work on more layers and it's so much easier having things of different colours, even if you're going to cut everything out in white. I should have done that as a top tip at the beginning, really. Okay, so what I'm doing, I'm just selecting both and just centre aligning them just so that I know that's in the right place and how it's going to be in the shadow box. So again, I'm duplicating the snowflake. And this snowflake and the other one that I'm going to do, they are actually going to attach to the black layer that's behind the snowman layer at the moment. but we need the snowman layer there so we can see the right place to put them. So we're kind of building up a picture, but building up a picture in 3D. I think this is what people struggle to get their heads around with shadow boxes. But as long as you do it in a methodical way and concentrate on what your main layer is to start with, then you can build up around that. I've never found it difficult because I just think in 3D anyway, so it's hard for me to understand how others see it really. But I'm happy with that. So those two snowflakes are on that layer, so I've welded that all together. And my snowman's disappeared. There he is. Right. So I'm actually going to align these. Oh no. No, I'm not. I'm going to make another layer because I forgot to copy that one before I welded the snowflakes. Well done me. Yeah, so a step I missed out. I should have duplicated that layer before I added the snowflakes. So just ignore this bit. This should have already happened. Okay, right. The one thing that drives me mad about Design Space is it's really tricky to try and move layers, well, layers in the layer palette around, just using your cursor, which is something that is really easy in Adobe Illustrator, which is what I usually use. Right, so I've changed the colour of the snowflake. I'm going to call it a snowflake layer, but they're all going to have snowflakes on in a minute. And I'm changing the colour of this layer just so that I can see the differences really. You'll probably gather, right, just centering again, you'll probably gather that I'm not a massive fan of Cricut Design Space, but I thought it'd be useful as it's quite a popular program that people use. I think it's probably the most popular cutter, certainly in the US anyway. Okay, so this is a similar procedure to the layer that I did before. We're going to get the snowflakes in the right place within the scene. I guess that's what you call it, a scene. Okay, right, so I've hidden the other layers so I know that I'm just working with these two. When you hide a layer, it also stops you from accidentally working on the other layers, so they're kind of locked as well. So now I've welded that together. Oh, it drives me mad trying to move these layers around. Okay, so that's the order I want them in. Right, I'm going to align them again. Center align. Right, so now I'm just going to add a little bit of snow to the pale blue layer. This is going to be our front layer behind the mount in our shadow box. You just want to sort of play about with it really to get it in the right sort of place. I'm going to do two just so it gives a bit more character to it really. I could have just left it round, but and then I'm going to change the colour of these to match, because if you don't change the colour of them, when you weld, it's going to make the whole thing black again. go with the colour of the top one that's in the layers palette. Right. And I'm also going to do a similar thing for the dark purple back layer, but I'm leaving the snowman and the other snowflake layer visible just so I know I can get them in the right place, that they're actually going to be visible in the shadow box. Otherwise it's completely pointless to add them. And now I'm going to hide them. Okay, so I know that's roughly the right kind of height that I need it. I'm going to duplicate it again. And make that a bit bigger. Here we go. Yep, you can see that behind the snowman. Okay. Move that a little bit. You could fiddle with these for hours. you could add more stuff to it as well, but I'm trying to keep it very basic. I think you kind of get the idea of how you can use the shapes to build up stuff. Okay, right, weld those together. Now let's move the layer all around again. Have to rejig it. Okay, right, so now we've got our three main sort of scene layers. I'm just going to create another square, 2020. I'm trying to anyway. There we go. Okay. So this layer, we're going to move to the back, hopefully. Blooming program. Sorry about this. Right. There's probably an easier way of doing this, but I don't usually use this program, so I'll look into it for next time I do a video on this program. Okay, so we're going to move this square behind, because this is actually going to be the sky, the night sky in the background. Just sent those together. Because it's going to be a light up shadow box, we want sort of stars and moon in the background. I thought that'd be quite nice. Because you need holes in the background for the light to shine through, really. Yep. Right, we're going to make the moon now. So what I'm doing is keeping all of the layers visible, just so that I can get my moon in the right place. I'm going to align it so it's right in the centre. And then I'm going to select my circle and square, and then I'm going to slice it. And then I'm going to get rid of the two circles. You probably gathered this, but you need to have the shape that you're slicing out on top of the one you're slicing out of, if that makes sense. So the circle needed to be above the square in this instance. Okay, so now we're going to add some stars. Luckily there is a star shape in the palette, so we haven't got to actually make a star. Right, so once you've got your first star the right size, you could make them all different sizes, but for the sake of speed I'm just going to duplicate them all the same size. But you could fill about this with this for ages. You don't have to use a star shape. You could use circles. I actually use a lot of circles in my shadow boxes for the backgrounds, and I sort of intersperse it with my own style of star that I've come up with. I mean, once the lights are on, they look like stars anyway, if they're circles, but I just thought I'd use a different tool, because you're probably fed up of seeing me use the circle tool. So what I'm doing now, I've actually left the snowman layer visible, just so I can see the parameter within which I need my stars to be, and then I'm hiding it and filling in, duplicating and filling it in. You'll probably want to fiddle for ages with these stars. I would if I wasn't doing a tutorial. One thing you could do, rather than duplicate each one, you could select a few of them, duplicate, move around. But I've chosen to do it the difficult way. Now I'm in too deep. Right, so although these ones are slightly out the boundary, that's deliberate, because when you view the shadow box from a slightly different angle other than head on, you're going to see those star cut, well, what will be star cutouts. Right, so I've hidden the other layers so that I could easily select all those stars. Otherwise you'd have to manually go through and select them all in the layers panel, and it just take forever. So we're going to select all of those together, the background layer and the stars, and we're going to slice them. Sorry, I should have said that I welded the stars together before I sliced them, like I did with the snowman face. Okay, so now our layers are all in the wrong order again. Right, so now we're going to make the mount layer. So we're going to make this square 20 centimetres again. I'm going to change it. Oh, sorry, no, this is the background layer. Beg your pardon. So this layer, this yellow layer, goes behind the lights. So you would have this layer, and then the lights, and then the stars layer. Right, so this is the mount layer that I'm making now. This circle I'm actually going to make smaller as 16 centimetres, just so the aperture of what I call the mount layer is slightly smaller, so you don't really see the edges of the shadow box, or the edges of the circles in the shadow box layer as prominently. It's just a tiny detail, but it does make a difference. Okay. So they're really all in the wrong order now. I don't know what it does that. It seems to jump, even though I try and put it in the right place. Sorry, I'll stop whinging about Design Space. Okay, right. So need to seem to align all that so all our layers are together. I'm just going to change the colour of the mount layer. I usually do it a shade of green when I'm working. I don't know why, because I don't always cut it in green. But Still didn't get it in the right order. Okay. So that's our layers for our shadow box. So when we're going to make it, it will show you all the separate layers on the different mats. Now the majority of these we're going to cut out of white. You could actually do the very background layer in white instead of pale yellow, but I like the kind of glow that it gives. So these are our 6 cut out layers. I've chosen to do the stars layer in like a dark blue colour. Some people would actually cut that in white as well, but I actually prefer cutting the sky in a darker colour because I think it gives more contrast when it's all in the shadow box. So even if you're looking at it in the daylight, you still can see a picture rather than just a sort of sheet of white, really. But it's entirely up to you. If you want to do it what's considered the traditional way and cutting everything in white, then it'll still look great. So then this is the layers stacked together, and then finally in the shadow box itself. I'm not actually going to show you how to assemble the shadow box in this video. This is purely a design video, but I will be making a further video soon, just to show how I put the shadow box itself together, how I make the spaces to go in between, and the placement of the lights in the back. And so look out for that video. And thanks for watching, and if you've got any questions then please let me know.